The pathological ego. In a wider sense of the word, the ego itself is pathological, no matter what form it takes. When we look at the ancient Greek root of the word pathological, we discover uh, discover just how appropriate that term is when applied to the ego. Although the word is normally used to describe a condition of disease, it is derived from pathos, which means suffering. This is, of course, exactly what the Buddha already discovered 2000 years ago as a characteristic of the human condition. A person in the grip of the ego, however, does not recognize suffering as suffering, but will look upon it as the only appropriate response in any given situation. The ego, in its blindness, is incapable of seeing the suffering it inflicts on itself and on others. Unhappiness is an ego created mental emotional disease that has reached epidemic proportions. It is the inner equivalent of the environmental pollution of our planet. Negative states such as anger, anxiety, hatred, resentment, discontent, envy, jealousy, and so on are not recognized as negative, but as totally justified and are further misperceived, not as self created, but as created by someone else or some external factor. I'm holding you responsible for my pain. This is what my implication, the ego, is saying. The ego cannot distinguish between a situation and its interpretation of and reaction to that situation. You might say, "What a dreadful day," without realizing that the cold, the wind, and the rain, or whatever condition you react to, are not dreadful. They are as they are. What is dreadful is your reaction, your inner resistance to it, and the emotion that is created by that resistance. In Shakespeare's words, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. What is more, suffering or negativity is often misperceived by the ego as pleasure because up to the point the ego strengthens itself through it. For example, anger or resentment through strengthen the ego enormously by increasing the sense of separateness, emphasizing the otherness of others, and creating a seemingly unaccessible fortress like mental position of rightness. If you were able to observe the physiological changes that take place inside your body when possessed by such negative states, how they adversely affect the functioning of the heart, the digestive and the immune systems, and countless other bodily functions, it would become abundantly clear that such states are indeed pathological, are forms of suffering and not pleasure. Whenever you are in a negative area, there is something on you that wants the negative, that perceives it as pleasurable, or that believes it will get you what you want. Otherwise, who would want to hang on to negativity, make themselves and others miserable, and create disease in the body? So, whenever there is negativity in you, if you can be aware at that moment that there is something in you that takes pleasure in it or believes it has a useful purpose, you are becoming aware of the ego directly. The moment that happens, your identity has shifted from ego to awareness. This means the ego is shrinking and awareness is growing. If in the midst of negativity, you are able to realize at this moment, I'm creating suffering for myself, it will be enough to raise you above the limitations of conditioned egoic states and reactions. It will open up infinite possibilities which come to you when there is awareness. Other vastly more intelligent ways of dealing with any situation. You will be free to let go of your unhappiness the moment you recognize it as unintelligent. Negativity is not intelligent, it is always, uh, always of the ego. The ego may be clever, but it is not intelligent. Cleverness pursues its own little aims. Intelligence sees the larger whole in which all things are connected. Cleverness is motivated by self interest and is extremely short sighted. Most politicians and business people are clever, very few are intelligent. Whatever is attained through cleverness is short lived and always turns out to be eventually self defeating. Cleverness divides, sorry, cleverness divides, intelligence includes. The background unhappiness. The ego creates separation, and separation creates suffering. The ego is therefore clearly pathological. Apart from the obvious ones, such as anger, hatred, and so on, there are other more subtle forms of negativity that are so common they are usually not recognized as such. For example, impatience, irritation, nervousness, and being fed up. They constitute the background unhappiness that is many people's predominant inner state. You need to be extremely alert and absolutely present to be able to detect them. Whenever you do, it is a moment of awakening, of disidentification from the mind. Here is one of the most common negative states that is easily overlooked precisely because it's so common, so normal. You may be familiar with it. Do you often experience a feeling of discontent that could be that could best be described as a kind of background resentment? It may be either specific or non-specific. Many people spend a large part of their lives in that state. They are so identified with it that they cannot stand back and see it. Underlying the feeling are certain unconscious held beliefs, that is to say, thoughts. You think these thoughts in the same way as you dream your dreams when you're asleep. In other words, you don't know you are thinking those thoughts, just as the dreamer doesn't know what he's dreaming. Here are some of the most common unconscious thoughts that feed the feeling of discontent or background resentment. I've stripped away the content from those thoughts so that the bare structure remains. They became they become more clearly visible that way. Whenever there is unhappiness in the background of your life or even in the foreground, you can see which of these thoughts applies and fill in your own content according to your personal situation. There is something that needs to happen to in my life before I can be at peace, happy, fulfilled, etc. And I resent that it hasn't happened yet. Maybe my resentment will finally make it happen. Something happened in the past that should not have happened, and I resent that. If that hadn't happened, I would be at peace now. Something is happening now that should not be happening, and it is preventing me from being at peace now. Often the unconscious beliefs are directed towards a person, and so happening becomes doing. You should do this or that so that I can be at peace. And I resent that you haven't done it yet. Maybe my resentment will make you do it. Something you or I did, said, or failed to do in the past is preventing me from being at peace now. What you're doing or failing to do is preventing me from being at peace. Um, who would like to continue with a very good topic, the secret of happiness? I could continue, but I think somebody else should do this.
May I?
Please,
Am
please.
I? Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Uh, I'm starting. The secret of happiness. All of the above are assumptions, unexamined thoughts that are confused with reality. They are stories the ego creates to convince you that you cannot be at peace now or cannot be fully yourself now. Being at peace and being who you are, that is, being yourself, are one. The ego says, maybe, or at some point in the future, I can be at peace. And if this, that, or other happens, or I obtain this, or become that, or it says, I can never be at peace because of something that happened in the past. Listen to people's stories, and they would all be entitled. Why I cannot be at peace now? The ego doesn't know that your only opportunity for being at peace is now, or maybe it does know, and it is afraid that you may find this out. Peace, after all, is the end of the. How to be at peace now? By making peace with the present moment. The present moment is the field on which the game of life happens. It cannot happen anywhere else. Once you have made peace with the present moment, see what happens, what you can do or choose to do, and rather what life does through you. There are three words that convey the secret of the art of living, the secret of all success and happiness: one with life. Being one with life is being one with now. You then realize that you don't live your life, but life lives you. Life is the dancer, and you are the dance. Life is a dancer, and you are the dance. The ego loves its resentment of reality. What is reality? Whatever is. Buddha called it tatata, tatata, the suchness of life, which is no more than the suchness of this moment. Opposition toward that suchness is one of the main features of the ego. It creates the negativity that the ego thrives on and have unhappiness that it loves. In this way, you make yourself and others suffer and don't even know that you're doing it. Don't know that you are creating hell on earth. To create suffering without recognizing it, this is the essence of unconscious living. This is being totally in the grip of ego. The extent of the ego's inability to recognize itself and see what it is doing is staggering and unbelievable. It will do exactly what it condemns others for and not see it. When it is pointed out, it will use anger, denial, clever arguments, and self justification to distort the facts. People do it, corporations do it, governments do it. When all else fails, the ego will resort to. shouting, or even to physical violence. Send in the marines. You can now understand the deep wisdom in Jesus' words on the cross. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. All this is very to the end, the misery that has afflicted the human condition for thousands of years. You have to start with yourself and take responsibility for your inner state at any given point. That means ask yourself, is there negativity in me at this moment? Then become alert, attentive to your thoughts as well as to your emotions. Watch out for the low level unhappiness in whatever form that I mentioned earlier, such as discontent, nervousness, being fed up, and so on. Watch out for thoughts that appear to justify or explain this unhappiness, but in reality cause it. The moment you become aware of a negative state within yourself, it does not mean you have failed. It means that you have succeeded until that awareness happens. There is identification with inner states, and such identification is ego. With awareness comes disidentification from thoughts, emotions, and reactions. This is not to be confused with denial. The thoughts, emotions, or reactions are recognized, and in the moment of recognizing, disidentification happens automatically. Your sense of self, of who you are, then undergoes a shift. Before you were the thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Now you are the awareness, the conscious presence that witness those states. One day I will be free of the ego. Who is talking? The ego. To become free of the ego is not really a big job, but a very small one. All you need to do is to be aware of your thoughts and emotions as they happen. This is not really a doing, but an alert seeing. In that sense, it's true that there is nothing you can do to become free of the ego. When that shift happens, which is the shift from thinking to awareness, an intelligence far greater than the ego's cleverness begins to operate in your life. Emotions and even thoughts become depersonalized through awareness. Their impersonal nature is recognized. There is no longer a self in them. They are just human emotions, human thoughts. Your entire personal history, which is ultimately no more than a story, a bundle of thoughts and emotions, becomes of secondary importance and no longer occupies the forefront of your consciousness. It no longer forms the basis for your sense of identity. You are the light of presence, the awareness that is prior to and deeper than any thought and emotion. Pathological forms of ego. Would anyone like to take over? Do we have any more readers? Or I can
Yes, yes,
continue.
we have names, but you can continue if you want to. No, I
I
think no,
can
no.
I can start if
Okay, please take over. Thank you.
pathological forms of ego should be forms, right? Uh, as we have seen, the ego is in its essential nature pathological if we use the word in its wider sense to denote dysfunction and suffering. Many mental disorders consist of the same egoic traits that operate in a normal person, except that they have become so pronounced that their pathological nature is now obvious to to anyone except the sufferer. For example, many normal people tell certain kinds of lies from time to time in order to appear more important, more special, and to enhance this image in the minds of others, who they know, what their achievements, what abilities and possessions are, and whatever the ego uses to identify with. Some people, however, driven by the ego's feeling of insufficiency and its need to have or be more, lie habitually and compulsively. Most of what they tell you about themselves, their story, is a complete fantasy, a fictitious edifice the ego has designed for itself to feel bigger, more special. Their grandiose and inflated self image can sometimes fool others, but usually not for long. It is then quickly recognized by most people as a complete fiction. The mental illness that is called paranoid schizophrenia or paranoia for short is essentially an exaggerated form of ego. It usually consists of a fictitious story the mind has invented to make sense of a persistent underlying feeling of fear. The main element of the story is the belief that certain people, sometimes large numbers or almost everyone, are plotting against me or are conspiring to control or kill me. The story often has an inner consistency and logic so that it sometimes fools others into believing it too. Sometimes organizations or entire nations have paranoid belief systems at their very basis. The ego's fear and distrust of other people, its tendency to emphasize the otherness of others by focusing on their perceived faults and make those faults into their identity, is taken a little further and makes others into inhuman monsters. The ego needs others, but its dilemma is that deep down it hates and fears them. Jean-Paul Sartre's statement, hell is other people, is the voice of the ego. The person suffering from paranoia experiences that hell most acutely, but everyone in whom the egoic patterns still operate will feel it to some degree. The stronger the ego in you, the more likely it is that in your perception, other people are the main source of problems in your life. It is also more than likely that you will make life difficult for others. But of course, you won't be able to see that. It's always others who seem to be doing it to you. The mental illness we call paranoia also manifests another symptom that is an element of every ego, although in paranoia it takes on a more extreme form. The more the sufferer sees himself persecuted, spied on, or threatened by others, the more pronounced becomes his sense of being the center of the universe around which everything revolves, and the more special and important he feels as the imagined focal point of so many people's attention. His sense of being a victim, of being wronged by so many people, makes him very special, feel very special. In the story that forms the basis of his delusional system, he often assigns to himself the role of both victim and potential hero who's going to save the world or defeat the forces of evil. The collective ego of tribes, nations, and religious organizations also frequently contains a strong element of paranoia, us against the evil of others. It is the cause of such much human suffering. The Spanish Inquisition, the persecution and burning of heretics and witches, the relations between nations leading up to the First and Second World Wars, communism throughout its history, the Cold War, McCarthyism in America in the 1950s, prolonged violent conflict in the Middle East are all painful episodes in human history dominated by extreme collective paranoia. The more unconscious individuals, groups, or nations are, the more likely it is that egoic pathology assumes form of physical violence. Violence is a primitive but still assert itself to prove itself right and another wrong. But with very unconscious people, arguments can easily lead to physical argument. To their opinions and those each person so identify thoughts make up their opinion that those thoughts harden into mental positions which are invested with a sense of self. In other words, identity and thought merge. Once this has happened, when I defend my opinions, thoughts, I feel and act as if I was defending my very self. Unconsciously, I feel and act as if I were fighting for survival, and so my emotions will reflect this unconscious belief. They become turbulent. I'm upset, angry, defensive, or aggressive. I need to win at all costs, lest I become annihilated. That's the illusion. The ego doesn't know that mind and mental positions have nothing to do with who you are, because the ego is the unobserved mind itself. In Zen, they say, don't seek the truth, just cease to cherish opinions. What does that mean? Let go of identification with your mind. Who you are beyond the mind then emerges by itself. Work with and without ego. Most people have moments when they are free of ego. Those who are exceptionally good at what they do may be completely or largely free of ego while performing their work. They may not know it, but their work has become a spiritual practice. Most of them are present while they do their work and fall back into relative unconsciousness in their private life. This means their state of presence is for the time being confined to one area of their life. I have met teachers, artists, nurses, doctors, scientists, social workers, waiters, hairdressers, business owners, and who perform their work admirably without any self-seeking, responding to what the moment requires of them. They are one with what they do, one with the now, one with the people or the task they serve. Can you stop moving it up and down? It's a little distracting, please. Uh, the influence such people have upon others goes far beyond the function they perform. They bring upon a lessening of the ego in everyone who comes into contact with them. Even people with heavy egos sometimes begin to relax, let down their guard, and stop playing their roles when they interact with them. It comes as no surprise that those people who work without ego are extraordinarily successful at what they do. Anybody who is one with what she or he does is building the new earth. I have also met others who may be technically good at what they do, but whose ego constantly sabotages their work. Only part of their attention is on the work they perform, the other part is on themselves. Their ego demands personal recognition and wastes energy in resentment if it does not get enough, and it's never enough. Is someone else getting more recognition than me, or their main focus of attention is profit or power, and their work is no more than a means to that end? When work is no more than a means to the end, be of high quality. When obstacles or difficulties arise in their work, when things don't go according to expectation, next page, please. When things don't go, thank you. When things don't go according to expectation, when other people or circumstances are not helpful or cooperative, instead of immediately becoming one with the new situation and responding to the requirements of the present moment, they react against the situation and so separate themselves from it. There is a me that feels personally offended or resentful, and a huge amount of energy is burnt up in useless protest or anger. Energy that could be used for solving the situation if it were not being misused by the ego. What is more, this anti-energy creates new obstacles, new opposition. Many people are truly their own worst enemy. People unknowingly sabotage their own work when they withhold help or information from others or try to undermine them lest they become more successful or get more credit than me. Cooperation is alien to the ego, except when there is a secondary motive. The ego doesn't know that the more you include others, the more smoothly things flow and the more easily things come to you. When you give little or no help to others or put obstacles in their path, the universe, in the form of people and circumstances, gives little or no help to you because you have cut yourself off from the whole.
Can you just reread this? This is beautiful.
When you give little or no help,
Yeah, I was about to say. Just read it again.
when you give little or no help to others or put obstacles in their path, the universe, in the form of people and circumstances, gives little or no help to you because you have cut yourself off from the whole. Beautiful, no?
Yeah, the whole para was awesome. Yeah.
The ego's unconscious core feeling of not enough causes it to react to someone else's success. If that success has taken something away from me, it doesn't know that your resentment of another person's success curtails your own chances of success. In order to attract success, you need to welcome it wherever you see it. This is beautiful and profound. Okay, I think Suman can continue.
Yes, I may.
Thank you.
The ego in illness. An illness can either strengthen or weaken the ego. If you complain, feel self pity, or resent being ill, your ego becomes stronger. It also becomes stronger if you make the illness part of your conceptual identity. I am a sufferer of such and such a disease. Ah, so now we know who you are. Some people, on the other hand, who in normal life have a big ego, suddenly become gentle and kind and much nicer people when they are ill. They may gain insights they may never have had in their normal life. They may access their inner knowing and contentment and speak words of wisdom. Then, when they get better, energy returns, and so does the ego. When you are ill, your energy level is quite low, and the intelligence of the organism may take over and use the remaining energy for the healing of the body. So, there is not enough left for the mind. That is to say, egoic thinking and emotion. The ego burns up considerable amounts of energy. In some cases, however, the ego retains the little energy that remains and uses it for its own purposes. Needless to say, those people who experience a strengthening of the ego in illness take much longer to recover. Some never do, and so the illness becomes chronic and a permanent part of their false sense of self. The collective ego. How hard it is to live with yourself. One of the ways in which the ego attempts to escape the unsatisfactoriness in personal selfhood is to enlarge and strengthen its sense of self by identifying with a group, a nation, a political party, corporation, institution, sect, club, gang, football team. In some cases, the personal ego seems to dissolve completely as someone dedicates his or her life to working selflessly for the greater good of the collective without demanding personal rewards, recognition, or aggrandizement. What a relief to be freed of the dreadful burden of personal self. The members of the collective feel happy and fulfilled, no matter how hard they work, how many sacrifices they make. They appear to have gone beyond ego. The question is, have they truly become free, or has the ego simply shifted from the personal to the collective? A collective ego manifests the same characteristics as the personal ego, such as the need for conflict and enemies, the need for more, the need to be right against others who are wrong, and so on. Sooner or later, the collective will come into conflict with other collectives because it unconsciously seeks conflict and it needs opposition to define its boundary and thus its identity. its member will then experience the suffering that inevitably comes in the wake of any ego motivated action. At that point, they may wake up and realize that their collective has a strong element of insanity. It can be painful at first to suddenly wake up and realize that the collective you had identified with and worked for is actually insane. Some people at that point become cynical or bitter and henceforth deny all values, all worth. This means that they quickly adopted another belief system when the previous one was recognized as illusory and therefore collapsed. They did not face the death of their ego, but ran away and reincarnated into a new one. A collective ego is usually more unconscious than the individuals that make up that ego. For example, crowds, which are temporary collective egoic entities, are capable of committing atrocities that the individual away from the crowd would not be. Nations not infrequently engage in behavior that would be immediately recognizable as psychopathic in an individual. As the new consciousness emerges, some people will feel called upon to form groups that reflect the enlightened consciousness. These groups will not be collective egos. The individuals who make up these groups will have no need to define their identity through them. They no longer look to any form to define who they are, even if the members that make up those groups are not totally free of ego yet. There will be enough awareness in them to recognize the ego in themselves or in others as soon as it appears. However, constant alertness is required since the ego will try to take over and reassert itself in any way it can. Dissolving the human ego by bringing it into the light of awareness, this will be one of the main purposes of these groups, whether they be enlightened business, charitable organizations, schools, or communities of people living together. Enlightened collectives will fulfill an important function in the arising of the new consciousness, just as egoic collectives pull you into unconsciousness and suffering. The enlightened collective can be a vortex for consciousness that will accelerate the planetary shift, the incontrovertible proof of immortality. Ego comes about through a split in the human psyche in which identity separates into two parts that we could call I and me or me and myself. Every ego is therefore schizophrenic, to use the word in its popular meaning of split personality. You live with the mental image of yourself, a conceptual self that you have a relationship with. Life itself becomes conceptualized and separated from who you are when you speak of my life. The moment you say or think my life and believe in what you are saying, rather than it just being a linguistic convention, you have entered the realm of delusion. If there is such a thing as my life, it follows that I and life are two separate things. And so I can also lose my life, my imaginary treasured possession. Death becomes a seeming reality and a threat. Words and concepts split life into separate segments that have no reality in themselves. We could even say that the notion, my life, is the original delusion of separateness, the source of ego. If I and life are two, if I am separate from life, then I am separate from all things, all beings, all people. But how could I be separate from life? What I could be there apart from life, apart from being? It is utterly impossible. So there is no such thing as my life, and I don't have a life. I am life. I and life are one. It cannot be otherwise. So how could I lose my life? How can I lose something that I don't have in the first place? How can I lose something that I am? It is impossible. Yeah, do we have to stop here?
Yeah, let's stop. It's 7:47 already. So we'll open up for discussion and we'll take up the next chapter on Monday. So, and it is also a longer chapter and a deeper one. So we'll stop. So this week was all about ego, we may say. So it's all going in depth and understanding our ego. So good reflection also over the weekend for us. So yeah, let's open up for discussion about whatever we read today or anything around ego or whatever you would like to share. Please feel free.
Um, may I?
Yeah,
Deepa here.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone who wants to
So,
speak can unmute and speak and just follow, like make sure that the other person gets equal chance to speak. That's it. Yeah, go on.
so yeah, today's reading also extremely hard hitting and very close to what we are going through, most of us. Um, the part where, we believe we anchor our happiness, our peace. The writer uses the word peace, our happiness to certain outcomes. Like, for example, if I get married, if I have a child, if I get this job, if I get that promotion, if I own that jewelry, if I go on that vacation, that if and whatever comes after that, no, we just anchor it to that, and that somewhere stops us, stops us from actually enjoying peace. And here the writer calls it all ego. But in reality, we are moving away from the present. We are not enjoying the gift of the present, rather anchoring it to something which may or may not happen. And then when those things happen, when we achieve that vacation or having a child or reaching some point in our life, in our career, in our personal life or finance, we move away from that. Again, we don't enjoy that marriage or that child or that peace, we don't enjoy it. We again have some other thing and we move on to that. And we never experience that peace or joy or happiness. And we program ourselves somewhere to the blaming thing. And actually, it's called gaslighting and manipulation. The writer doesn't use these two terms. We put the blame on others. That is one thing. And at the same time, he also talks about we shouldn't be a stumbling block to someone else's growth and happiness. The comparison, the ego, the jealousy, the envy also puts a stumbling block in others' growth. So that also we shouldn't be doing. So the best way moving forward is, yeah, we should be doing things which is important for our growth and keep on moving ahead, but not anchor it, our joy or peace or happiness, to some achievement or something happening or not happening in our life. Wherever we are, whatever path we are taking, whatever we are in the process of doing, that process also should be enjoyed. We should find peace in that and keep on elevating our self growth and our inner peace. And we should take the accountability. We have to be responsible for what we are or what we aren't, and find joy in what we haven't done, because that leads us to another opportunity to diversify into a new type of growth. And we should not be a stumbling block. If we are not doing good for others, we should also not be a stumbling block. As far as possible, we should be incremental to anyone's growth and happiness and joy. Somewhere, we lose that because we don't want to be beneath someone, so we don't allow someone to outgrow us. So we take all the help, we take all the references and everything, but when it comes to giving it back to that person, we don't. and that leads to our own, slow growth. So initially it feels like, we have achieved something, because in comparison to someone else, we have achieved something, but we have taken someone else's help. So it is nature's law that what we have taken, we have to always return it, whether it be a good word, a reference, helping someone, a guiding hand. We have to keep on doing that. And sometimes we have to sacrifice, or we have to give up certain things. But by giving up, we open the floodgates, the tsunami to come in the form of joy and happiness in various ways to us. So that is how the world works, I believe, and also has been my personal experience. And holding on to anger, dissatisfaction also is very, something very concretized in our heart, in our mind. We have to break it and allow that peace to come in. It is very difficult when we are going through pain and suffering and grief, especially grief. We have to rebuild ourselves. It is important. We have to do that. So that is my take today. Thank you.
Yes, yes, beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that reflections. So when something sinks in deeper and we are able to reflect and connect it with our personal lives, that's at another level, right? Altogether. So yeah, thank you for that, sharing that, Deepa. Yeah. Anyone else who would like to add something, share something?
I wanted to add something based on what Deepa just shared. So thank you, Deepa, for the beautiful reflection. Something that you said towards the end, right? Like when we are in pain and we are suffering. Uh, what I got reminded of was the podcast that Mansi has shared the links for. So I've listened to the first two chapters, and in that, like one, I think I don't remember if it was the first chapter or the second one, where a person calls in and asks about this, that she has been dealing with a very difficult illness. Um, and how to deal with that, right? When you are in physical pain and you do constantly, it's hard for you to focus on the present moment and whatnot. So the author, like, shared such beautiful uh, suggestions of very actionable items. Like what he mentioned was, whenever you are sick or ill, especially with these very difficult types of illnesses, stop talking about them to in general, to people. And initially it will be hard because people will expect you also to talk about it, or they might keep asking you about it because you have been talking about it, right? But all you have to say is that, yeah, I right now I'm focusing on healing, and that's it, right? And it's going good, or whatever, like you can phrase it however, is what the author said. And you, of course, talk about your sickness and illness to the doctor, right, whom you are getting the treatment from. I found this very, very useful because so many times we think, I mean, I'll say this in Hindi because बोलते हैं ना, हमें बचपन से मतलब एक कंडीशनिंग यही सिखाई गई है कि वो दुख बांटने से कम होता है, सुख बांटने से बढ़ता है. In certain circumstances and depending on किससे आप share कर रहे हो, of course you can be selective, but it's not a blanket rule कि आप हमेशा जब भी बात करोगे pain के बारे में, like that's what it is, like that it will reduce the pain. And I think he beautifully even mentioned it, so it ties back to what we covered today as well, right? In the illness wala part, I had highlighted those lines also: ego and the ego in illness, right? And he mentions there uh, something about, like, if you keep talking about it, again, you are identifying with it, right? And it becomes harder for you to even recover, and sometimes you never recover. And towards the end, he says some never do, and so the illness becomes chronic and a permanent part of their self. of their false sense of self. So we are actually manifesting it as well. So I found this very, very profound from today's reading, and few other things. And I'm not going to take a lot of time. I want to make sure that others get a chance to. But something that really stood out to me was towards the beginning, how he says that ego is not intelligent. It might be clever, right? It's not intelligent. So that differentiation was really profound. Again, he's so good at explaining the concepts with simple words. And something other than that, like again, one concept, the whole explanation about collective ego was very beautifully explained. And then the last para, I think, where everyone, like most of us, were like, oh yeah, we want to read that again. So I found that again very profound about how things do come out to be true. Like, and we are able to relate to these like profound messages. That's what I'm liking about the book. Although it is deep, it is very profound, and some of the concepts might be new for us, but still, because of the situations that he has uh, presented, and all of the small sections that he has created, and he is citing examples, right, of how there are some people, he has met some people like doctors, hairdressers, all of them, who are not egoically involved in their task, and then he's also seen the opposite of it, right? So it's again very beautiful. And in the podcast also, he explains some of these things with very simpler examples. So I think a lot of questions that might arise when we are reading through the chapters, the podcast definitely helps. So I'm really glad that Mansi has been actively telling us about it. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Anyone else wants to add? Um, I was also about to highlight that part. Like, I personally loved how he has differentiated ego in different areas, like work, how it operates, collective consciousness, illness, and all. And I just remember one thing, which is which was shared long back. Like, I first heard it from Sadhguru basically, and then it came through different sources as well. So he just said this beautiful line. I have been mentioning it before also, that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So this is a very, very powerful and profound line, which actually could be like as a gist of what we read today also, right? So where we have this, we have been conditioned to associate pain with suffering. But if we are just able to separate out the two, like pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And he was explaining this, like when he explained this, I remember he mentioned one of his incidents where he had met with an accident, and he had literally, his foot was torn apart, and he had to attend a meeting or some session or something urgently. And he just made the doctor, it was a very local doctor, and he just made him make the give him the stitches on the spot without anesthesia, without anything. And then the doctor was actually horrified, even for doing it. But then he was in awe that Sadhguru was totally calm and just talking to him, just distracting himself from the pain. So the doctor asked him that, are you not getting hurt, like, because I'm giving you the stitches without putting you on anesthesia because of the short of time or whatever. And he said, yeah, it is obviously paining, but I choose not to suffer through it. So I think this happens with all of us most of the time, like especially mental sufferings, basically, because physically, at least, I think we are able to cope up, I feel, if we have a good amount of support and all. But mentally, I think we get very confused with pain and suffering. So I just wanted to add that. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I just jumped in the middle. Anyone else? I think Shilpa has raised her hand. Oh yeah, she's there. I guess. Yeah. Anyone else also? Like, you can just unmute and speak. Like, go on.
Hi, everyone. I just would like to add something To what was already said about this pain and suffering, that is what Buddha has said. And I have a life example just like you did. My mom, whenever she was sick, I was told not to ask her how is she feeling the next day, because that would bring her back to the identity of a sufferer. So I asked her, so how do I find out how you're doing? So she says, then be precise. Be precise. How is the headache? How is the pain there? And that's it. And she would tell me that I would have to, that if she needs to share it with me, she will share it. I should just go about not thinking about her sickness, because she is more than her sickness. And everybody would come and see her if she was sick, and when she was sick, and then they would ask her, how are you doing? And this social talk that you do, when you go to see a sick one, it really made me think. And when I was sick, I realized every time I was asked, I was going back into that role of being the sufferer and getting stuck to the identity of being diseased or sick. So I learned, and I think it really helped me a lot, not to focus on it, focus on something else. And then I also wanted to share with you that the ego, as we know, creates roles and identities, control, or even superiority. And here, Thaler, he highlights how we unconsciously act in all our dealings with ourselves, with all relationships, with ourselves, with anyone else. And yeah, so we lose connection with our true self. And once we realize that we are not the role that we play, and then the roles, that there's this unconscious identification creates so many conflicts and so much emotional pain. And that which is not the reality. And authenticity begins when we become aware of the roles that we're playing. And this is so important for any relationship, whether you're a parent or whether you're a partner or whether you're an employee or employer. When you stop seeking your worth through the other person. And what I liked about Thaler is, I just remember what my dad had said after he read this book. He said this was a real biryani of all the teachings in short. And my dad considered it was not in depth, it was just scratching the surface. And after reading it for several times, I do think it is. But even then, it's a very good start to start with this book to go on a deeper value. And I like here, I mean, it's the same thing what the Gita says, or what the Carl Jung talks about in his shadow work. that the essence of our being is much deeper. I'm missing a word. More real, authentic than any role that we play. And right now, I'm going through, I don't know if I should say this, through a loss. And when I feel very sad, and sometimes I move to tears too, and I realize that I'm in the past or I'm in the future, because in the future I don't have this person who was so close to me. And so I'm jumping from the past to the future. And the only safe harbor that I have is the present moment. And when I'm in the present moment, I'm in the presence in capital letters. I do not have this feeling of loss. I have the feeling of gratitude. I can see that the other person had to leave, just like as you and I will have to leave this planet. All of us are just here for a short while. And this is the game of life. And that goes on in the presence without any kind of emotional baggage, anything. It's just, there is, when I'm in the past or in the future, or especially in the past, there's a lot of blaming. Oh, I could have taken her earlier to the hospital. I could have done this. I should have, I must have, I had to. Something, some of those moral verbs, and I watch myself going into this drama. And then all of a sudden, I'm really drowning into the drama. And then all of a sudden, I just pull myself back into the present. And then I breathe into the present. And I look at the trees. I look at my feet. I look at everything around me, and I think everything around me is impermanent. So even this pain, this suffering is self-made, so I can let it go. Maybe I took so much of your time. Thank you so much for, this was a very personal share. But I just want to let you know, while I'm in tears, I can start laughing. Because there is so much more that I've had with this person. And when I look at life from that person's point of view who left, it's really, really fantastic. And it was the right time for that person to leave. And I have been so blessed to be with that person till the very end. So I'm not trying to lessen or not trying to suppress anything. If it comes up, I let it come. I don't suppress it. But then the awareness of presence just moves in. I haven't done anything. It's just that maybe when I'm walking in the park, I hear a bird or I see a cat, crossing the street or coming close to my foot. And that brings me into awareness. Or yesterday it was a cockroach. So immediately brought me into awareness of being in the now. And then I can start laughing about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your heart out, Shilpa, with us. It was so touching. Just for everyone here, I hope it's okay if I share that. Uh, Shilpa just lost her mom recently, and she had lost her father some like few years back maybe. So I cannot even imagine a life like when I mean one day I know that I have to face it, and it's obviously it's a law of nature. So yeah, but I don't know how would I be even able to deal with it. But whatever you shared today was so profound, and I feel that comes from the experience of being mindful, being present. And I think that is one of the gifts that your parents gifted you, right? Like teaching you meditation, teaching you getting you aligned with these practices maybe, which maybe further you nurtured yourself. But that was beautiful, and thank you, because you never know when we share something, we never know who in the room needs to hear that. And so it's very important sometimes when we just pour our hearts out, feel free, because this is obviously a safe space. And obviously maybe we are all here together for a reason, we need to hear it for some reason. And maybe it can be a life changing share or experience or whatever for someone else in the room. You never know. So thank you for pouring your heart out, and trusting this space to do that. So I'm so grateful. And whatever you shared today was such a um, enlightening experience for me personally. Um, because I don't know if I would be have been able to process any of my loss that way. But now definitely it gives me a lot of strength to do that, like whenever I will have to. So yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, anyone else wants to share something? Okay, I think we are all heavy-hearted now. So okay, in that case, if we have done with all the shares, let's end the call. And thank you for this beautiful reading together and all that. We have done together, like all the shares, all the insights. And it has in fact made the reading experience even more enriching and beautiful. And we would have not deep dived uh, into the books the way we are doing right now, just by reading it on our own. So that's a different level experience altogether. So thank you so very much, each one of you. And yeah, see, I'm just just very curious again to read the next chapter, the pain body, because I remember the next chapter was something that has hit me really hard when I heard it for the first time in the podcast. So I will obviously share the podcast link after we finish the chapter on maybe Monday or Tuesday. But till then, let's process the ego. I think it's for a reason that we have only been able to cover the ego part this whole week. So maybe this is a big topic and we need to process it even further. And Dilpa, by sharing her own experience, gave it a different dimension altogether than what the author has already shared. So let's process our ego from all the areas that we read through: work, collective consciousness, um, illness. So let's just reflect upon how had our ego been operating in all of these areas in our life. So let's reflect, and maybe if possible, do share your reflections or insights if anything profound occurs to you in the group also, so that might help someone else uh, navigate through this. So thank you for everything, friends. And yeah, see you on Monday now directly. And let's process all of this, and also go to the podcast. Now it will be 4 podcasts that you'll have to listen to. So if you haven't already listened to, I would highly insist, because the podcast will take you into a much deeper understanding of the book. So so even if you have read the book, or you have not been consistently attending all the sessions, or not reading the book fully, I would highly insist, still go to the podcast, and it will really help you connect with it. So yeah, yeah, Richa, you want to say something?
No, just that, yeah, thank you for for all the shares, and especially Shilpa for being so open about sharing about your mindfulness and presence. Uh, I'm really looking forward to the next chapter, the pain body. So I'm looking forward to Monday already because I have read a lot about it. Just as a, he had just touched upon pain body in the book Power of Now that I had read few years ago. And since then, yeah, I've been wanting to, delve deeper into this. And I knew that this book covers it, but somehow I was never starting this book. So I'm glad that I'm here now, and that we'll be reading this chapter very soon.
Yeah, I have one
Yeah,
quick thing to tell. Thank
yeah,
you,
please.
Shilpa. You mentioned about when someone is sick and when people visit them, they inquire about their health and their condition. So somewhere we are making them relive that suffering, the pain, and the disease. So instead, distracting ourselves from that and taking them to a different way is actually healing. Yes, I just thank you for that share. All your personal shares were very good. Yeah. So it's very important when someone is low in whatever way, we shouldn't remind them of that pain and that suffering by talking about it, rather uplifting them and to help them heal and to come out of that low level by giving a positive talk. So redirection is very important. Thank you.
And
Have a
and
great
personally,
weekend.
even from yes, yes, have a great
Sorry.
weekend. And maybe personally, just one more thing, I also want to thank Shilpa for this. So the way you mentioned about being precise, your mom's share about being precise about the illness, I really love that point because I remember there are people in my family when they're sick, like so they just get very dramatic about it. I just we just read about the chapter, right? And so personally for me, I get uncomfortable, and I know how it's going to go when I even going to ask them like how are you feeling when they're not well. So I completely tend to avoid asking at times, like because I know how it is going to go, right? Like, so but this gives a and somehow I feel, and then I go through that guilt where I should ask, but then I'm not asking, but then I don't want to give that person another opportunity to create a whole drama out of it. So I feel this is very beautiful. So henceforward, I think this will really help me. Like when you precisely ask about the illness, like how is your headache, how is the fever now, I think that that really helps. That really gives us direction as to also communicate, but not to entertain any drama or anything as such. And obviously, if anyone wants to go into a drama, even after that, they will obviously seek that opportunity. But at least it helps us communicate in a better way. So that was a great takeaway for me today. So thank you for sharing that, Shilpa. So yeah.
Yes, very true. I found that very helpful also. The being precise. That's a very good suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. Deepa, you want to add something? Or
No,
is
no.
the
The
okay,
hand.
okay.
I just wanted to add on to what Shilpa said. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you all on Monday now. And I would highly recommend. It's a deep book, and everything. I think every time you read it in different phases of your life, you'll have a different insights out of it. So it's coming to us now. So I would highly recommend. Please go to the podcast, reflect upon the learnings, and it will really help us process through life better. So yeah, thank you, bye bye. See you all. Have a very
Thank
very
you.
happy weekend. Bye bye. See you all.
Yes, you too. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye to all. Thank you.